creating something from scratch and putting it out, or dreaming of something and actually bringing it into the real world, that it just, I think it requires you to be authentic. Like, that's the baseline of being powerful, because once you become your true self and you do what you know you're supposed to be doing, there is a power that is literally unlocked for you.
That's June Reese. I'm Cara Duffy, and this is the Powerful Ladies Podcast. Welcome to the Powerful Ladies Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm really excited that you're here today. I've been following you online, and you're doing such incredible things in the interior design space and in the advocate space. Let's begin by telling everyone your name, where you are in the world, and what you're up to.
So I'm June Reese. I am based in Houston, Texas. And currently, it's kind of hard for me to say what I'm up to. I'm always doing way too many things at one time. But I would say at this current moment right now, I am gearing up to get ready for us to plan our 2024 conference for the nonprofit that I work for, BIV Inc. I am also getting ready for a Visionaries Brunch, which is an entrepreneur brunch that I'll be hosting in Houston in June. And then I'm also kind of working on a new book, I think. I think it's still in the early phases.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's tell people about your current book that's out.
Absolutely. So Iconic Home is actually an anthology. It is a collection of 50 Black interior designers. I am actually the 50th. So there's 49 other Black interior designers included. And it just kind of dives into their backgrounds, where they came from, how they got where they are. But then it also serves as a pretty good resource, I think, for homeowners to pull inspiration. And there's also some really great tips in there on how to implement some, designer worthy strategy into your own space.
Yeah, love that. I think when we look at the media landscape of interior designers and who's getting recognition on TV and their own Netflix specials, there's not a lot of women of color. Yeah. So does that enrage you? Like, what should people know about how everyone who is an interior designer isn't white and doesn't love beige? Like, there's so much more in the space.
There's so much more. I wouldn't say so much it infuriates me. I think maybe earlier in my career, it definitely kind of upset me. And that is, of course, why I'm in the space that I'm working in now, where I'm able to create these opportunities, different programs, benefits, things like that for other Black designers. And like you said, there's just not a lot of diversity, right? We get a show, maybe 1 or 2 seasons, and then it's kind of on to the next. And so we are here, right? And we're starting to see us kind of come up. This organization is over a decade old. And so it's taken some time, but now we kind of see the representation happening a little more organically, I think, which is, awesome.
Well, and it's a really big deal that you were nominated for an NAACP Image Award. That's a big deal. Did you lose your mind when you found out?
Oh my God. Literally, someone DM'd me on Instagram. They were like, "Hey, did you know you were nominated for an NAACP award?" I'm like, "What? Like, wait, what?" So yeah, I definitely, my husband looked at me and I just looked at him, and we were just kind of like, okay.
Yeah. Well, I want to go back to 8-year-old you. Would she have imagined the life you have now, the business you have now?
Oh, it's so funny. I'll say no, but also yes. I think from an early age, I always knew that I was different. I always knew that I was really creative. I always knew that I would do something big. Like, even like my yearbook quotes, everything's like, I'm going to do something big. I'm going to own a business. I'm going to do this. But I wasn't, like, I didn't have the actual vision. So this is even beyond my, wildest dreams. Like, an NAACP award nomination on my first book is it's unheard of. It's probably not unheard of, but I wasn't expecting it. I didn't write the book for the accolades.
How did you get into interior design?
I ended up on Google, and I came across the Art Institute of Houston. At the time, I think they're closed now, but I went to do a tour, I think a week or so before I graduated, or a week after, or something like that. And I literally moved in to the off campus housing like 3 days later. So it was kind of like I'd been introduced to it accidentally. And then when I was looking for a career path outside of what I thought I would be doing, which is journalism, it just kind of steered me naturally in that direction. Google.
Mhm. The power of Google. Having any business is challenging. It has its roller coaster moments. And I think creative businesses add an extra layer because it's not something that you can put down at the end of the day. Like, you are always a designer. That's just who you are. And
Yeah.
I'm sure you're like going on all the searching everything, making your board, saving images, looking for new like vendors all the time. What has that journey been like for you? And how have you persevered when times have been tough?
Oh man. So the journey has been so interesting for me. I think I got really lucky. I'm very proactive. So I started internship maybe a year or two after I'd been in school. And so I had a really great experience. My first internship, I literally helped that designer set up a storefront. So I learned a ton of information about vendors and things that I wouldn't have learned until later.
Mhm.
And then I fast forward and I ended up having a few other like internships or jobs where I was kind of immersed right into like vendors shopping, High Point Market. Obviously, that's the
Mhm.
biggest market that we have. It's 2 or 3 times a year. And because I met Kim Ward, who was the founder of BIDN, so Black Interior Designers Network, which is now BID Inc., Black Interior Designers Incorporated, she, like, one of my first trips with her
Mhm.
within a few months was to High Point Market. So I was like thrust into the chaos that is High Point Market.
I have a lot of clients who are interior designers, so I know all about High Point. And my parents actually live in North Carolina right now. So when I drove past it, I'm always like sending them photos like, is this a good image or am I giving you some trauma with this image? Because High Point is intense.
It is intense. It's really intense. And my first few trips were just like Alice in Wonderland, I feel like,
Yeah.
kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's those conferences matter so much, and every industry has them because you get to be in a community filled with people like you who are talking about all the new things. And I'm such a believer in people having a coach and a community. How has your community of fellow interior designers and just women of color that are in the design space, how has that changed how you viewed yourself and how you felt about your business?
Oh, so again, meeting Kim Ward, it was such a pivotal point in my career to meet Kim, because I was in a place where, I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel
Mhm.
welcome at a lot of the things that I was attending, because this was in 2011, right? When I started college.
Yeah.
And so the industry has made leaps and bounds since that point. But I was at a place where I actually was considering a career change. I was considering finding something else to do. And when I met Kim, it kind of reignited that spark that I initially felt for design. By meeting her, I came in contact with this huge network. I think maybe it was 100 people at the time, 100 Black designers across the country
Mhm.
operating at a really high level. Tiffany Brooks has been on HGTV. She's probably one of the
Mhm.
longest running Black women on HGTV. So meeting her in person, Nikki Chu,
Yeah.
who had a fabric line and a rug line at the time when I first met them, it kind of, again, it was like, oh, so this is a thing that we do and
Mhm.
we can do it and we can do it well and, really excel in this industry. Like, it's definitely possible. So it's
Yeah.
definitely kind of rewired my confidence and rewired just the balls that I
Mhm.
have to go after everything within this industry.
Yeah. How would you describe your style to someone who hasn't seen your work or your webpage?
I would say I'm very modern, and not in like a sterile way. I think
Mhm.
more up to date, or it feels recent, but I think it also has elements like sophistication and classic. So it doesn't feel dated. I do a really good job of that.
Mhm.
Sophisticated was always the word I got in college, so I use that a lot. A lot of my work is sophisticated, but it's still a little fun. It's still a
Mhm.
little playful in different areas. So I think the overall term is probably eclectic. technically, because there are layers from
Yeah.
all design styles if it works. And that's kind of where I land.
Hmm. Well, it's such an interesting world to be in as well, because it's a dance with you and your clients. And some are more involved. Some are like, just do your thing. I'll be back in 6 months. Like, there's such a variety to it. So how do you balance bringing your clients' personality into their spaces and then also not letting them ruin a beautiful house at the same time?
Ooh, so funny enough, I had those clients at the beginning. Once you start to raise your rates, figure out what you're charging, and
Yeah.
up your minimum budgets, you kind of start to get a different league of clients where they're like, "This looks good, thanks, sign off,
Mhm.
good to go." But I definitely dealt with those clients in the past, and so trying to educate them, that became a really big part of our company, because a lot of the people that we worked with were first time, they
Mhm.
never dabbled in this industry. And so we just did a lot of education. If they wanted something, I was most of the time able to articulate or explain to them or provide them another option that makes more sense based on what I know. And so just educate, kind of like a
Mhm.
teacher and a psychologist, as we all know, in
Yeah.
our industry.
Well, and Houston has so many amazing, powerful women that have come from Houston, of course, Miss Beyonce. And I don't think it gets enough recognition at a national level for what's happening there in the city. How would you describe the climate and culture of Houston, and why are all these powerful businesses, women coming out of that city?
Man, that's a loaded question. I think we're all trying to figure it out, right? We don't know, but you're right. Like when our list of icons and people who have
Mhm.
operated at such a high level that their name is household, like everybody knows them. It really is interesting, honestly. I don't know why. I do not know. I mean, obviously, we're a really big melting pot. I think we're probably one of the most diverse cities. So I didn't grow up in Houston. I think
Mhm.
that's a good way to start it. I grew up outside of Houston, so Katy, Berkshire, kind of in the
Mhm.
country outskirts area. And so I've only been in Houston a little less than a decade now. And what I will say is that it does feel like opportunity. Like I'm inched closer and closer to downtown. I'm like officially in
Yeah.
downtown after 7 years. And it just, there's always something happening. The community is really good about networking, getting together. Like there's always something to do. There's always some new restaurant to try. And I think here we're just immersed in a lot of different cultures. We're immersed in just a lot of people are really hustlers here, honestly. People own nightclubs, they're brokers, they have restaurants, coffee shops, um, record shops, but they do all these other things too, like
Mhm.
marketing. So I think it's just a really huge melting pot of people having come from the outer places, people having come from other places, and then there's a lot of people that were born right here, like Beyonce, that just exude excellence.
The perfect way to say it. Excellence, yes. It's also not very common to marry your high school boyfriend in these days. My parents are high
Yeah.
school sweethearts. How have you guys grown together, and how does he support you in the dreams that you have?
Oh man. So you're right. It's not that common. Every now and then we run into somebody and they're like, "Oh, we are too." I'm like, "That's so cool." My aunt and uncle actually are as well. So they were, together in high school and they're married. They've been married. They have kids my age. Um, so for us, again, like you said, we grow together because we were literally kids when this started. And so I think I always talk about how lucky I am to have had someone through my entire adulthood. Most people have to figure
Mhm.
things out alone. I've never had to do anything alone. There were times we laugh about this now. When we were in LA for the awards, we were riding around and we were laughing about like the times where he was delivering pizza and I would like sneak to his job and ride in the passenger seat. And he's just always been like, he's given me the room, I think, to be this like really big, kind
Mhm.
of all over the place person. And it's just, I don't take it for granted. Like, I think it's just completely underrated of how a good partner really can elevate you and, help you get to goals that maybe neither of you are clear on, right?
Yeah.
Because him coming to work for me, or work with me, not for me, we launched our company in 2019. He left his job, and so far, you have to do those kind of side things to make ends meet as an entrepreneur, but we haven't had to go back to work. He's trusted me to say, okay, this is going to work. We're going to do it. And we've literally gotten it done.
It's so rewarding, I think, to realize what you can do together.
Yeah, totally. Like 100%. Because when we say that too, we're like, look at us in the middle of downtown. Like, because we used to say, we're going to live downtown. We're going to live downtown. Like, we're going to
Yeah.
travel. We're going to go to LA and go to Malibu. Like, we're starting to do the things now. So it definitely is.
When you think of the words powerful and ladies, how would you define them? And do their definitions change when they're next together versus apart?
Powerful ladies. I think if we start with the word powerful, I think everything kind of boils back down to authenticity to me, or as of late, that's kind of the buzzword for me. Just kind of being true to yourself. I think there's something powerful about being who it is that you are, putting out art with not without fear, because that would not be true, but creating something from scratch and putting it out, or dreaming of something and actually bringing it into the real world. As a powerful person in general, that I think it requires you to be authentic. Like, that's the baseline of being powerful, because once you become your true self and you do what you know you're supposed to be doing, there is a power that is literally unlocked for you. Now, ladies, if we, this is the separate version. Ladies, obviously, you know, we I think that we would do an awesome job running the world. I think we time and time again have shown that, despite the emotions and the empathy and all the things that we have, we're able to take those things and connect them with the powerful part, and just create these really larger than life things and moments and experiences for people. And so, of course, they change when they're, not together, but powerful ladies together, I think there's something that, women or ladies we have when connected to us being in our authentic self is just a beautiful, beautiful thing for everyone.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned earlier how Kim opened up so many doors for you. How have just the women in your life in general, how has that changed your life and helped you along your journey?
So when I met Kim, I actually met Kia as well, who's the president of BID with me. And so we've been friends thick as thieves at this point for almost 7 years. I get the math wrong sometimes. But she's been an excellent mentor to me as well, even while we were both kind of figuring things out. And we're still figuring things out. We tell people that, like, it might look like we have it all together, but we're both learning from one another. And so that's been a really rewarding relationship for me over the past 6 or 7 years. I think also Nikki Pooh is someone I love to mention, because I worked for her design firm for almost 3 years. And I learned so much about business and like really running a firm and juggling multiple projects and different levels of team members. She had tons of team members. And so just kind of learning to manage, learning to lead. I learned a lot of things working for her as well. And so I think those two, and then Valerie Roberts, they own of Roberts Carpet. I worked for her in Karen for 2 years, I think. And so I worked in their store. And I did a lot of things, again, learning about vendors and how to keep a store up, things like that. So I've actually had some really powerful, all of my mentors so far. I just have found my first male mentor. But in a decade, all of my mentors have been women, literally.
There are so many changes on a cyclical, basis in interiors, just like there is in fashion and other trends. What would you advise someone who's looking to redecorate their house now and is trying to find their style? How would you recommend they start? What are some tips you would give them?
I think you said it right, fashion. That's one of the things I always direct my clients to, looking at what you actually like to wear. What do you buy the most of? What colors? What type of patterns? If they have no idea, I think that's a good place to start, because it at least tells you what you like.
Mhm.
But also, I have a public Pinterest board for anyone who would like to look at it. And there are tons of design styles that are actually broke down. And so clients can literally just kind of go in there, surf from different design styles and screenshot or take the things that they actually like. Pinterest is, I think, an extremely underrated tool for
Yeah.
designers and for clients, because I've been able to like really effectively communicate with my clients by them going in and identifying, even if it's one thing in a photo that they like, they can point that thing out. Like, I really like this chair because
Mhm.
XYZ. And so we just kind of break it down from there, and it makes it easier to build the space on top of what they said they like specifically.
I do think Pinterest and then LinkedIn are the two most
Mm,
underused social media platforms for
agreed.
business in general. Like when I meet with somebody who, especially is in a service-based industry and they don't have those two earmarked, like TikTok, whatever. But if we want
Mhm.
long-term,
Yes.
reliable Pinterest, LinkedIn changes things. And now Instagram is like a website. You have to have an Instagram.
You
Otherwise, you're not
have
real.
to. Literally, someone said that to me. They said it's basically your business card. If you don't have one, I'm kind of like, oh, why don't
Yeah.
you have an Instagram? But yeah, I totally agree, especially about LinkedIn. And I think a lot of people are like me, like we have our LinkedIn, it's set up, and every few
Mhm.
years we go in and add three
Yeah.
things. But I do want to be more intentional about it, because I've heard about how powerful it actually is.
Well, it's a great place to have conversations. Like a lot of the things
Mm,
that work on LinkedIn are prompting people like, hey, here's what I thought about this article. What did you think? Or here's my 5 favorite tips. Like, do you agree, disagree? So people actually want to have a conversation there, which is really interesting because there's so
yeah,
many, even Pinterest is like, save. And like there's no interaction where
interaction.
LinkedIn
Yeah.
actually has it.
But Pinterest is
Hmm.
where I go when I need a break. Like Pinterest, someone said Pinterest is
Yes.
literally like Instagram without all of the talking. It's really nice.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I think it's, at least for me, like I was always ripping things out of magazines. I always had my closet door covered in things. Like
Yeah.
I've always been a save collagey person. And so
Yeah.
having Pinterest is a dream come true. Like whoever invented it knew, really knew what my 13-year-old me wanted.
Brilliant. Literally, the amount of boards I have on there for just random things like
Yes.
dinner parties. I mean, just anything that you
Hmm.
could think of is there. Yeah.
Yeah, completely. As you are looking at where you're going next, you talked about the second book, you're growing your business. Like, what are you really focused on this year? And what kind of year is it for you? Is it a cruisy and enjoying it year? Is it a really go into stretch mode? How would you define it?
Ooh, it's always the in between with me. I'm never like one way. That's my problem. um, so I did define a word of the year. I started to do that, and so my word of the year was expansion. For
Mhm.
me, but not in like a really hustle kind of way. I think a lot of people would ask me after the book came out, like, so what's next? What's next? I was so exhausted when the book came out. I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't. I just need I just need some downtime. So I've
Yeah.
pretty much had a lot of like mental downtime aside from work. And now I've gotten back into that creative space where I'm like, okay, so what does this expansion mean? Like what happens next? And so I know primarily growing BID, because a lot of what we want to do, like kids programs, more career days, which we did our first one in December at KIP Memphis. Just kind of growing those programs because we do want to start to introduce more, kids in lower income communities, Black kids, kids from different backgrounds and diversities
Hmm.
to interior design a lot earlier. And so we've collaborated with Benjamin Moore. We're hoping to collaborate with Kohler, who we've worked with, and different brands like that to bring these really cool, like interactive trade days to different schools. So that's a big one for me. And also, like you said, my brand. So I haven't really announced that, but it's not a big deal. We'll be rebranding our design firm just to better, I think, encompass all of the things that we do. And so that's a pretty big scale thing for me this year. And then
Hmm.
aside from that, just kind of writing. I wanted to be more intentional about writing and like actually commit to some sort of timeline. So I think for me, like I said, it's more of a go with the flow, but also a year where I'm being really intentional about the things that I put my energy into. Like, does it align with what I want? Does it align with where
Hmm.
I'm going? Does it align with what it needs to happen for me to be retired in 7 years? So I always say I'm going to retire at 40, and I'm like, that's probably not going to happen, but you know, if it's possible, you know, what can I do now that might set me up to retire as soon as possible? And not
Yeah.
just disappear, right? But be in a place where I don't have to be the face. I don't have to show up. You know, I don't have to design if I don't want to. That's kind of the goal. So laying the
Yeah.
foundation maybe is what's happening for me this year.
And I'm glad that you brought it up that way because I love the phrase small business owners do and entrepreneurs create systems to scale. And I think we step over going from just creating a job for ourselves to really creating a business that we can run instead of be doing. And
Yeah.
so many of the clients I work with are stuck in that doing space. And
Mm.
it's like, I'm working harder than when I had a job. Maybe I just get a job. And you're like, no, 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 we can fix it.
Yeah, it's like no skill, hire somebody else, outsource.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's definitely
Yeah.
moving. And I've never heard that before, but that makes sense. Like small business owner and entrepreneur are definitely
Yeah.
different things.
And just different focus. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be the doer. But if you
Exactly.
are someone craving more freedom and more just ability to be in the thought leader space versus again the
Yeah.
doing space, it's a
Yeah.
different strategy to be taking. Hmm.
It is. It really is. Because, like you said, once you now you can be in that thought leader space
Yeah.
once you're not doing all the time. And I think that's where I want to be. But I know I have to
Hmm.
set the business up for that first.
Yes. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. How did the iconic home book come about? Because I cannot wait for mine to arrive. I love the cover. It's beautiful. Like it's a book that you want on display, let alone want to know what's inside, which I'm sure you did intentionally because I'm sure you use lots of books when you're designing. But where did the book idea come from? How did this all happen?
Oh man. So the book idea, let's start there. I have this post on my Instagram because I went through my notes and found it. I'm a huge advocate of like write things down, write it down because as entrepreneurs we're always like some
Yes.
new grand idea. And so just writing it down, write things down. And so on April, I want to say 18th or 19th of 2019, I wrote, you know, iconic home coffee table book. There was no real details. It was just something that maybe popped into my head. And I'm like, okay, one day. It was also something, a coffee table book was something Kim discussed with me before she passed. And I can't remember the full conversation, but you know, something about having a coffee table book. Like it was something she hoped for the organization or for us to have as a community.
Mhm.
And so in 2019, I wrote it down, moved on from it because again in 2019 I'm not about to write a book, like that's not where my head is. I'm not there yet. Surely that's 5-6 years out at least for me. And in 2020, after George Floyd's murder and all of the kind of unrest that was happening in America, we had a ton of people who kind of started to connect with us. We saw, you know, how the media
Mhm.
happened, but a lot of people connected with us, you know, asked how they could help us increase our mission. Doug Turshin reached out and he's like, hey, you know, do you guys have something you would like to create? And I'm like, yeah, we do actually. And so we started the process in 2020, literally. And I think we officially started the actual process in 2022. It took quite some time to like do the whole process. But I think it was always a thing that was supposed to happen. That's why I think I was so surprised when, you know, we were nominated for an award. I'm like, oh, I didn't intend on getting nominated for awards. I didn't know the award existed. But it was just a thing that I knew, you know, needed to be created. And that's been a big thing for me kind of over the last few years is just creating things that I could have benefited from or somebody, you know, behind me could benefit from. And that just happened to be one of those things. I think not just Black kids, right? Anybody can read
Mhm.
this book. People who want to be allies, people who want to know more about the community, like it's a resource for everyone.
Mhm. Yeah. When you look at what you have created and you look at the influence you're having today, does that inspire you? Do you feel pressure from it? Like, how are you kind of stepping into this new space you have?
That's a good question. I think there was definitely a lot of I was overwhelmed, and you know, everybody would say, "Oh, how do you feel now that it's out?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm a little overwhelmed, but I'm like in a good way. It's not negative. It's just it's a lot, you know,
Mhm.
happening. And even though it's like you know it's coming, it happens. And it's actually really weird because a book is released and you're expecting this like huge thing, and then you realize it's just a book just came out, like that's it. And so I think I did feel at that point, I'm like, what happens next? What happens next? So, and people kept asking, I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to force
Mhm.
anything. And so I've been able to just kind of ride, like you said, the wave of people. Like I've gotten really sweet DMs from people, just people really excited about the book, people excited about what the content of the book, the whole idea behind the book. Like everybody's excited for different reasons. And like I said, I knew people would be receptive. I knew people would enjoy it, but I think that I was still surprised by how much
Mhm.
people enjoyed it. So it's definitely inspired me to actually be more authentic. I think that's why authentic continues to come up, because I am very much a perfectionist. Um, and so that book, I laugh about it. I'm like, I have to go to therapy. Like I knew I needed to go to therapy prior to, but I ended up in therapy in the middle of this process, because it was so much more work than I thought it would be. It was so hard. It was just a
Mhm.
lot of challenges in addition to all the things that I already needed to deal with. So it definitely taught me to just be more authentic, be more honest, because I had to ask for help. I had to be okay with putting something out that everybody was going to judge, which was like terrifying.
Yeah.
And so now, things like creating content was something I always wanted to do, but I was always too anxious, too in my head, or too scared. And now it's just kind of opened me up to do more of whatever it is that I want to do.
Mhm. We ask everyone on the podcast where you put yourself on the powerful lady scale. If 0 is average everyday human and 10 is the most powerful lady you can imagine, where would you put yourself today and on an average day?
Ooh. I think today and on an average day, despite how I'm feeling, I think I am in a space of like eight. I'm going to say eight. Eight keeps coming
Okay.
up. I'm like, I think I'm in a place of eight. Because like I said, I'm now getting out of my shell. I'm now able to show up online, and I'm kind of doing things that I wanted to do. But of course, I think there's always room for growth. So will any of us ever be at a 10? Beyonce. But so I would say an eight. And I think I operate on an eight now on kind of a regular basis, where I'm pretty much, I tell people that like, if I think I truly believe, like if I wanted to fly a plane and I applied myself and actually did what needs to do, I could fly a plane. Like I actually believe
Mhm.
that. And I think that about everybody. I think that if you actually apply yourself and you're patient and, you know, give yourself grace, whatever it is that you want to do, whatever it is I want to achieve, I know that it's possible for me.
Mhm. If you could go back and tell 18-year-old you anything, what would it be?
Oh, you'll figure it out. Definitely. Easily, just because, like I said, when I got ready to graduate, everyone's like, oh, I'm going here, I'm going here. And I'm like, I don't know what's about to happen. But we'll see. And so I think that that's obviously a really scary time when everyone's like, oh, I'm going off. What are you going to do with your life now? And you're like, I kind of know. I thought I knew
Mhm.
before I didn't get into UNT, and now I didn't. So now I don't know. But I would just say, obviously, you'll figure it out.
Yeah. This is a big community with lots of connections, people. Everybody wants to support each other. So I've been asking everyone this year, how can we help? What's on your to manifest or to wish list? What do you need, big or small, that we can help make happen?
Oh my gosh. That's definitely a huge question. What don't I need? Um, at this moment, um, gosh, for me personally, anyone in Houston, I would love for you to show to my event. This is my first local event. I'm, as usual, nervous about putting something on and putting something out that people are going to come
Mhm.
judge. But anyone who's local to just show up for that. Anyone who is local to New York, which is where the conference will be this year in September, show up to the conference, donate to one of our programs, the scholarship that should be up and launched soon. Like
Mhm.
contributing to BID, it will help me in all kinds of ways, because it'll allow me to continue to put the people in place that we need and to build out the programs that we're doing. So purchase a book, because of course that puts some money in the organization's pocket. It puts money, a little bit of money in my pocket. Just anything that's out there for you to attend, purchase for me,
Mhm.
do that. That's always helpful.
Okay. And then we've also been asking everyone lately, like, what are the routines or habits that allow you to be your most powerful self?
I am really a shit show. I'm glad you said we could testify. That's the only word I could use for that. And I think people are always really surprised when they know me intimately because I think I come off. So I'm very into astrology. My rising is Virgo, and so I come off as very structured, very put together and organized. But I am a Sagittarius, so that is my sun, and that is actually what happens internally. And so when it comes to routines for me, I, it's hard. It's really hard. I
Yeah.
have severe time blindness. um, some days I stay up too late. I have insomnia because I have like not PMS but PMDD, which is like really aggressive PMS.
Mhm.
And so throughout the month, my mood is either up or down. And so I actually have really, really learned over these last few years now that I understand myself better. I do not force it.
Mhm.
When I can get up, I try to be up before 7. Great. I get up, I do the same thing. I kind of pray, I drink my water, I might fold some clothes if something's left over. Like I try to, no matter what time of day I get up, do the same things because it creates some sort of normalcy for me. But honestly,
Mhm.
I kind of just go with the flow now. It makes for a lot less stress. I don't have to feel guilty on the days I don't feel like working. I know people are like, you need to be consistent. Eh, it doesn't work for me. It causes me more stress, honestly, to say I'm
Mhm.
working at 2 p.m. even when I absolutely don't feel like it. And so I just really go with the flow. I get up, talk to God, I drink my water, and then whatever happens after that, depending on where my head is, that's just what has to happen. So I kind of honor my body a lot more now. And I think I've earned that because I've worked really, really
Mhm.
hard for a decade. So I think it's fair for me to say, I don't know what time I get up. I can't promise you anything before noon. And that's just that for me. And so that's what keeps me creative and what keeps me less stressed and healthy because I was so unhealthy before when I was just stressed all the time, trying to meet these deadlines, trying to make sure I got here, trying to do that. And so I'm not anti-routine because I think it works really well for some people. It just doesn't work for me.
Yeah. And then I love your necklace.
Thank
What is
you.
the story for you behind that necklace? Mm.
Oh wow, that is such a good question. um, I, I, right. Once you see this, everyone's like, "So you're on a spiritual journey. How'd you get here?" It's
Well, let's
been
for everyone
interesting.
who sorry, for everyone who can't see it, how would you describe your necklace?
Little, so it means eternal life, which I think is really, really beautiful. I've been on kind of this like deconstructing from religion journey, which I
Mm.
think a lot of people are now for various reasons. For me, I think it's kind of the same thing with the routines for me. It just created a lot of stress and anxiety about like
Mhm.
everyday human things for me. And in 2017, that was when Kim passed, actually. So my grandfather passed in 2016, and he was kind of a father figure to me growing up. And then in 2017, late 2016, I met Kim, and in 2017, she passed. So it was a very short amount of
Mhm.
time, and I'd say right under a year, where I went through kind of like these huge losses, and I didn't understand grief. I didn't understand, even the anxiety and depression that I was experiencing when I was in college that was keeping me from being able to finish classes. Like I didn't understand those things. And I was pretty, I was in a really, really dark space and it wasn't working for me. Like the thing is, I was like, pray, do this and that. I'm like, it's not working. And I don't even know exactly how I got introduced to spirituality. I don't, it happened when it was supposed to happen for me. And ever since then, I've kind of like just reimagined, what like my life is supposed to be like. Not what I've been told, not what, people say I should be doing, really just coming from honoring myself. Again, honoring my body and honoring myself has been really huge for me. And that's
Yeah.
what, this means for me to be able to have eternal life, whatever that looks like, is to be the best, most authentic version of myself.
Mhm. I love that. No, being someone who thought I would be an archaeologist, I see that and I'm like, I know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely want to also put you in touch with KJ Atlas. We had her episode came out recently, but she is a locational and business astrologer. based in LA, but she's amazing. And she's also just so cool. She was just on a panel I did about how to have it all. And her journey is incredible, but doing readings with her is actually really fun.
I would love that.
I had never heard of business or locational astrology until I met her. And then I was like, okay, yep. And plus she has red hair, so we're friends, obviously.
Have to be, right? Have to stay
Have to be.
No.
We're either, anytime that there's another redhead in the room, we're like related, we're married. Like I'm like, why? Why do you just want? Yeah.
It's community. See, it's community. It works the same for us, right? It's community. Like you have this person that understands you on some level. Yeah.
I love it. Well, for everybody who wants to hire you, support you, get involved, how can they do all of those things?
If you find me on Instagram, if you have an Instagram, like you should have an Instagram, you can find me at Reese with 2 underscores. And that's pretty much, I think, my name across like Pinterest, TikTok, and Instagram. And then of course it's June Reese on LinkedIn. But again, Instagram has that link and it'll take you to every single website or thing or interview that you might need that I have contributed to.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being a yes to myself and the Powerful Ladies and sharing all your wisdom today. This has been a lot of fun. It's been so nice to meet you.
It has. I had a really good time. So I can't wait to see the episode. Thank you.
All the links to connect with June, Black Interior Designers Inc., House of June Interiors, and of course to get her book, Iconic Home, are in our show notes at thepowerfulladies.com. Subscribe wherever you're listening and leave us a rating and review. Join us on Instagram at Powerful Ladies, and of course, if you want to connect with me, visit karaduffy.com or Kara_Duffy on Instagram. I'll be back next week with a brand new episode. Until then, I hope you're taking on being powerful in your life, go be awesome, and up to something you love.